There is a moment, quiet, elusive, often unnoticed, when the weight of sorrow begins to loosen its grip. It does not come with trumpets or fanfare. It does not demand your attention like pain so often does. Instead, it is like a soft breath of wind brushing across the ashes of a long-burned fire, the whisper of dawn before the sun dares to rise. In that moment, something ancient stirs, a recognition, perhaps, that struggle was never the end of the story, but merely the threshold. We live in a world of chains, not always the visible kind, mufine that bind wrists or shackle ankles, but invisible ones, tethered around hearts, woven through thoughts, welded into memory. These chains carry names: grief, guilt, betrayal, silence, fear. They coil around the psyche like ancient serpents guarding something sacred, something forgotten. And yet, within every human being, there burns an ember, silent and tenacious, that longs not only for freedom from the chains, but for something even more audacious: joy. The journey from struggle to joy is not a straight line, but a spiral, one that descends before it rises. It is not about escape, but transmutation, like coal under pressure, birthing diamond, or the crushed seed in dark soil pushing toward light. It is the paradox of pain birthing radiance that marks the soul's evolution. To break a chain is not merely to rid oneself of suffering. It is to step into a deeper awareness of one's unbreakable nature. Joy, then, is not a fleeting emotion, but a revelation. It is not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of divine meaning within it. This work, breaking chains, finding joy after struggles, is not merely a reflection or a guide. It is a lantern, a map inked not in certainty, but in wonder. Its contours follow the topography of the inner world, from the caverns of despair to the summits of awakening. It speaks not just to the mind, but to the archetypal self, the part of you that remembers who you were before the world told you who you had to be. We begin in the realm of shadows, where chains are forged from unmet expectations and silenced cries. Here, suffering is real, raw, human, tangled in stories too heavy to retell. But we do not remain there. We rise, slowly, with the courage to see through the veil, to ask not merely why did this happen to me, but what is trying to awaken through me. For struggle, when seen through the eyes of the soul, becomes initiation. The fire that seemed to destroy was in fact alchemical. It was remaking you. There is an ancient tale, whispered across cultures and mythologies, of descent and return. The hero who is cast down into the underworld only to emerge transformed, bearing the nectar of insight. In many ways, each of us is that mythic figure. The trials are real, but so too is the return, and not just a return to who we were before the pain, but to who we are because of it, resilient, illuminated, irrevocably whole. In the tapestry of this exploration, joy is not portrayed as naive optimism or avoidance of reality. Instead, it is the golden thread that runs through the darkest cloth, often hidden until the entire pattern is seen from afar. Joy is the knowing that the storm served its purpose, that the breaking was a beginning, that the silence birthed a new voice. This journey asks for honesty. It asks for the willingness to confront what has bound you, but also the grace to release it. It asks you to remember the sacredness of your own breath, your own becoming. For joy is not handed down like a trophy. It is uncovered like treasure. And the hands that lift it from the dust are always the same ones that once trembled in sorrow. In cosmic terms, every struggle is a distortion of harmony, and every breakthrough a return to it. Just as the seed must first fall apart underground to sprout toward the heavens, so must the soul often fracture before it remembers its wholeness. The chains that seemed unbreakable were only illusions hiding the truth. You were never truly bound. You were always becoming. This is not a promise of a pain-free life. Such a life does not exist in this plane. But it is a promise of meaning, of transformation, of joy that is not circumstantial but soul-deep. Joy that does not require perfect circumstances, but springs from sacred clarity. And through it all, you are not walking alone. The universe, the very architecture of your being, has encoded within you the map back to light. So, as we begin this unfolding exploration, part philosophical reflection, part sacred remembrance, let it be an invitation. Not to forget your struggles, but to see them anew, to lift the veil, to trace the scars not as signs of defeat, but as constellations guiding you home. To speak of breaking chains is to invoke a kind of sacred rebellion against inertia, against resignation, against the quiet tyranny of belief systems forged in our darkest hours. But more than that, it is to peel back the illusion that struggle is punishment, that pain is the final word, that joy is reserved only for the untouched. Here in this space, we begin to unweave the deeper architecture of suffering and reveal the cosmic symphony that plays beneath the noise. This is not a denial of hardship, it is a reframing, a sacred reorientation. At the heart of every struggle lies a story, not just the story of what happened, but the story we told ourselves about what it meant. These stories are the first chains. They often begin as a necessary instinct for meaning-making in the face of chaos, but over time they calcify. I am not enough. The world is unsafe. Love will always leave. They embed themselves into the psyche and whisper their poison in moments of silence. And yet, beneath these inherited scripts lies a far older truth, one not constructed but remembered. The first great theme in this journey is identity as illusion. So much of our suffering arises not from events themselves, but from the identities we assume in response to them. We become the victim, the failure, the abandoned, the betrayed. These roles are comforting in their clarity, but they are cages all the same. True liberation begins when we recognize that these identities are not who we are. They are echoes. Masks layered over the face of something eternal. To find joy, we must peel them away not with shame, but with compassion. Another core pillar is the paradox of wounded wisdom. We are taught to fear our pain, to avoid it, to silence it with distractions or drown it in noise. But the great mystics, the saints, the warriors of light, they knew differently. They knew that the wound was not a mistake but a doorway. That sorrow, when met with presence, becomes a teacher. That grief, when honored, reveals where love still burns. Pain is not the enemy of joy. It is its crucible. The deeper the sorrow has carved into your soul, said Khalil Gibran, the more joy you can contain. Closely intertwined with this is the truth of transcendence through embodiment. Many seekers imagine that joy is found in escaping the body, bypassing the human condition, ascending to some ethereal realm where nothing can touch us. But real joy is incarnational. It is found in the heartbeat, the tear, the trembling hand that reaches for connection. To break chains is not to float above life. It is to root deeper into it, to reclaim the body as a vessel not of shame but of divinity. Joy does not arrive when the pain stops. Joy arrives when the pain is seen, felt, and transmuted. And then there is the thread of divine timing and surrender. We live in a culture obsessed with control, with fixing, with urgency. But the healing journey does not operate on human timelines. Sometimes joy takes the long road. Sometimes the chains are not ready to be broken until we've truly understood why they were there. Patience, then, is not passivity. It is an act of radical trust. Trust that life is not random, that even in the waiting, the hidden work is being done. That surrender is not giving up, but giving in to something wiser. Within these themes pulses a living, breathing truth. Joy is not the opposite of struggle. It is the fruit of it. This is perhaps the most radical idea of all, that what we feared would destroy us has, in some unspeakable way, become our liberation. That our tears watered the seeds of our blooming. That every time we broke, we were being broken open. In the ancient myths, heroes often carry scars that glow with power. They do not hide them. They wear them as symbols of initiation. So too must we learn to see our past not as a shameful record, but as a sacred map. Every mistake, every heartbreak, every unanswered cry, it all lives as raw material for alchemy. Joy is not just something we stumble into. It is something we cultivate, sculpt, allow, and sometimes it is something we remember. There is a deeper force at play in this work, something that transcends personal narrative and touches the archetypal. We are not just breaking our chains. We are participating in a collective remembrance. Every soul who finds light after darkness becomes a lantern for others still walking through shadow. This journey is never just about the self. Joy has a ripple effect. It liberates not only the one who feels it, but those who witness its birth. The cosmos itself is woven with this rhythm. Chaos followed by order, darkness followed by light. This is not mere poetic metaphor. It is embedded into the very fabric of reality. Galaxies form from collapsing stars. New worlds emerge from tectonic rupture, and so it is with us. Our internal cosmos follows the same cycles. Struggle is not deviation, it is part of the design. It is the breaking of old forms to make space for something vaster. As we carry these themes forward into the next dimension of this journey, let us do so with a softened gaze, not one that resists what was, but one that welcomes what can now emerge. Let us not seek to rush into joy as a destination, but to walk with it as a companion, quietly blooming even amid the ruins. Stories are the soul's way of remembering what it already knows. Long before we had science or scripture, we had myth. Long before we could name trauma or speak of psychological healing, we dreamed in allegory. In this chapter of our unfolding, we descend into the symbolic underworld, where chains are not iron links but metaphors, and where joy, like a phoenix, rises not despite the ashes, but because of them. These narratives are not to be interpreted literally. They are maps of the interior, mirrors held to the architecture of transformation. Imagine, if you will, a vast and ancient forest. At its heart stands a gnarled tree, blackened by lightning, its bark cracked, its limbs skeletal. It is known as the Tree of Sorrows, and every soul must pass by it at least once. Some sit beneath its branches for a lifetime, mistaking it for shelter. Others curse it, hoping to flee. But those who dare to touch it to place their trembling hand upon its charred trunk, find that it is warm. Not dead, but waiting. For within its roots, buried deep in the soil, lies a single golden seed. That seed is joy. Not the joy of escape, but of integration. The tree does not bloom again until it is wept upon. Until the sorrow it contains is honored, not avoided. This is the first myth, that what seems lifeless may still give birth. That sorrow is a womb as much as it is a grave. Then there is the tale of the mirror keeper. A traveler stumbles into a forgotten temple carved into the side of a mountain. Inside, the walls are lined with mirrors, each one distorting her reflection. One shows her as monstrous, another as weak, another as glowing with false light. She cries out in frustration, "Which one is the truth?" And from the shadows steps an old woman, her eyes full of stars. "They are all fragments," she says, "but none of them are you." She hands the traveler a shard, smooth, plain, reflecting nothing. "Carry this with you," she whispers. "It will not show you who you are, but it will reveal what you believe." The traveler spends years polishing the shard, watching it slowly reveal her truest face, not through reflection, but through realization. This is the second myth, that identity is not found in what others show us, but in what we are brave enough to see when all illusions fall away. There is a third story, older than memory, of the chainsmith of the stars. It is said that at the edge of the known universe, there lives a being who forges chains not to imprison, but to awaken. Every link is made from the remnants of forgotten dreams, every shackle from the weight of unspoken words. Those who come to her seeking freedom are first bound tighter. They scream, they rage, they bargain. Only when they stop resisting, when they close their eyes and listen, do the chains begin to hum. The vibration reveals a melody, ancient and familiar. It is the song of their own soul, distorted by pain. And when they begin to sing it, trembling, broken, raw, the chains fall away, not because they were unlocked, but because they were no longer needed. This is the third myth, that what binds us may also be what teaches us how to sing. And still another tale, this one of a child born in a city of silence. No one speaks there. Every citizen wears a mask of joy, painted smiles, frozen laughter. The child, curious, begins to cry one day, and all turn away. Ashamed, the child flees into the wilderness, where the trees do not mock and the rivers do not judge. There, the child learns the language of storms and the grammar of roots. When she returns, she no longer wears the mask. Her tears have taught her how to truly smile. Her sorrow has given her the right to joy. Others, drawn to the truth of her face, begin removing their own masks. And the city slowly wakes. This is the fourth myth, that true joy must pass through the valley of authenticity. And it is only when we unmask ourselves that real healing begins. These symbolic narratives are not distractions from reality. They are reflections of it, encoded, archetypal, eternal. They bypass the intellect to speak to the soul. In each story, the struggle is not the end, but the invitation. And joy is not the easy reward, but the quiet miracle born from inner revolution. Symbols move us in ways logic cannot. A burned tree, a broken mirror, a mystical chainsmith. These are the shapes our deeper knowing takes. They remind us that beneath the literal world, a symbolic one pulses with instruction. that the events of our lives, however mundane or traumatic, carry mythic resonance. That perhaps your heartbreak was the tree, your depression, the mirror, your addiction, the chain, and your survival, your awakening, your still beating heart. These are the joy. To live symbolically is not to escape reality, but to deepen into it. To realize that your personal journey is a thread in a cosmic pattern. That you are not just someone trying to heal, but a character in a sacred tale unfolding across space and time. When you break your chain, you do not just free yourself, you shift the narrative for all who walk the path behind you. And so we carry these stories with us, not as answers, but as companions. As ancient voices reminding us that joy is not naive, and struggle is not failure. That everything, every chain, every scar, every silence, is part of the myth. And the myth is alive within you. The myths, the symbols, the luminous threads of philosophy, all of them stir the soul and reawaken something ancient within us. But eventually, we are brought back to the ground. We wake to alarm clocks, face the mundane ache of routine, brush shoulders with uncertainty and grocery lines and conversations that never quite reach the truth. The question then becomes, how do we carry what we've unearthed in the sacred depths into the structure of ordinary life? How do we integrate the golden ember of joy into a world still brimming with noise, chaos, and unfinished healing? Here begins the subtle revolution, the translation of the mystical into the practical. The first movement is internal. It begins not with grand decisions, but with subtle shifts in perception. Integration is not an act of adding, but of remembering. It is the daily practice of seeing through the illusion of finality. Struggles are not tombstones, they are trailheads. What happened to you is not who you are. It is what shaped the tools you now carry. And joy, that quiet companion, often doesn't appear in flashes of ecstasy, but in moments of soft recognition, the warmth of sunlight on your skin after a long winter of the soul, the stillness that descends after a storm of tears. Integration asks us to honor those moments, to pause, to notice, to let them land. This is not about denying the messiness of existence. Life remains chaotic, full of unexpected detours and uninvited visitors. But the integrated soul begins to respond, not react. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" it gently pivots toward, "What part of me is being called forth through this?" A conversation that once triggered defensiveness becomes a mirror to one's inner wounds. A delay or disappointment is met with breath rather than collapse. These are not superhuman responses, they are evidence of alignment. The chain, once pulled in panic, is now held in awareness. The body becomes a sanctuary in this process. For too long, many have lived in a fragmented state, spirit craving flight, body bearing burdens in silence. But integration means embodiment. It is choosing to feel the full range of sensation without numbing, to be present with trembling and ecstasy alike. The body stores every chain, every breakthrough. It is not your enemy, it is your record keeper, your tuning fork. So to integrate is to listen. Movement, rest, stillness, nourishment. These are not luxuries, but rituals of reconnection. They are how we anchor the soul's wisdom into flesh and bone. Language, too, becomes an instrument of transformation. The stories we tell ourselves daily are either tightening our chains or loosening them. Consider the subtle difference between "I am broken" and "I am breaking open." One sentence collapses possibility, the other widens it. In practical terms, this means catching your internal narration and reweaving it, not with hollow affirmations, but with truth that feels earned. Words carry power, and the way we speak, both inwardly and outwardly, becomes the architecture of our experience. To integrate is to curate language that reflects your unfolding, not your wounds. And then there are the relationships. Oh, how chains are often forged here, through abandonment, betrayal, or the slow erosion of self in the name of belonging. But integration does not mean isolating in the name of healing. It means discerning where the echoes of old pain still shape our dynamics, and having the courage to relate from wholeness rather than fracture. It is asking not, how do I get love, but how do I love without disappearing? Joy is deeply relational, not in dependency, but in resonance. When we begin to live from our healed place, even partially, we give others permission to rise into theirs. Let us not ignore the world either. The external structures we navigate, workplaces, systems, cultures, often echo the very chains we're breaking internally. Integration on a societal level means not only tending to our own healing, but becoming agents of transformation in the collective field. This does not require activism in the traditional sense, though that is sacred too. Sometimes it looks like speaking a difficult truth in a boardroom, or holding space for someone's grief without trying to fix it, or building something new, an initiative, a conversation, a family, that reflects the freedom you've claimed. And finally, there is time. This is perhaps the hardest piece. The modern mind has been trained to demand instant results, clear endings, quantifiable metrics. But joy doesn't move on a schedule. Neither does healing. Integration unfolds in spirals, in cycles, in unexpected revisitings of old wounds with new eyes. Some days you will feel free. Others, you will hear the old chains rattle faintly. That's not regression. It's refinement. A deeper polishing of the mirror. A more honest embodiment of truth. What matters is staying in the conversation. Not with others, though that helps, but with yourself, with life, with the unfolding intelligence that has carried you this far and is not done yet. Joy, when lived practically, becomes less a destination and more a frequency. It colors your decisions, softens your reactivity, amplifies your gratitude. It turns the simple into the sacred, the ordinary into the miraculous. You may not always feel it, but you can always return to it. That is the difference between momentary happiness and integrated joy. The former comes and goes like weather. The latter becomes your climate, a deeper yes humming beneath the surface of whatever else may rise. And so we return to the world. Same streets, same faces, same stories. But you are not the same. You carry something now. A truth, a flame, a song. The chain has been broken not by force but by revelation. And the joy you now glimpse, it's not borrowed, it's yours. There comes a moment, soft as dawn, when the final echo of the chain fades. It doesn't always arrive with fanfare. There may be no applause, no clear threshold crossed, no grand announcement to the world. And yet, within the sanctuary of the self, something has shifted. A burden once carried without question has quietly been laid down. In its place, not an empty void, but space, a sacred opening where joy, real and radiant, can finally breathe. This is not the joy of denial, nor the fleeting high of circumstantial bliss. This is the joy that survives the fire, the joy that stands at the edge of your former self, looks out over the wasteland of what was, and dares to sing anyway. It is the joy that arises not because the pain is gone, but because the pain has been seen, named, and folded into the greater wholeness of who you are becoming. Transformation, you now see, is not a destination. It is a return to essence, a return to the inner temple that was never destroyed, only hidden beneath rubble. You were never broken, only buried. And each struggle, each heartbreak, each shattering moment was not a detour, but a disclosure, a revelation of what needed to be burned away so that the eternal within you could be revealed. Look around your life now with these new eyes. The mundane becomes mystical. The conversations become thresholds. The patterns you once repeated in unconscious loops now appear before you like ancient glyphs, finally ready to be deciphered and released. The very people who hurt you become sacred mirrors, painful teachers, yes, but teachers nonetheless. And you, no longer the victim, step into the sacred role of alchemist, translator, liberator. There is no higher calling than to become whole. And wholeness does not mean perfection. It does not mean purity or performance or painlessness. It means embracing contradiction, holding the grief and the gratitude, allowing space for sorrow even as you dance. It means becoming a vessel vast enough to contain it all, without clinging to any of it. This is what it means to be free. This is what it means to break the chain not just once, but again and again. Every time life tempts you to contract, to retreat, to forget, you carry a legacy now. Not of suffering, but of overcoming. And not the brittle, armor-wearing kind of overcoming that denies the wound, but the rooted, luminous kind that says, yes, I have known the dark, and still I rise. If there is a final message, a closing transmission from this journey, it is this. Joy is your birthright, not as a reward for surviving, but as a memory of who you've always been. You don't need to earn it. You only need to uncover it, to clear away the debris, to stop mistaking the storm for the sky. Beneath every wave of despair, there is stillness. Beneath every layer of defense, there is softness. Beneath every mask of control, there is the radiant vulnerability of a soul longing to feel free. So let this be your call, not to strive harder or fix faster, but to remember deeper, to honor the spiral path that brought you here, to light your candle with the flame of all you've endured, and hold it high for others still navigating the dark. You are the evidence that healing is possible. That joy is not a myth. That struggle is not the end, but the sacred forge of becoming. Let your life speak that truth, not with perfection, but with presence. Let every step forward be an act of reclamation. Let every breath be a hymn to the part of you that chose to stay, to rise, to believe in something more. And if you ever forget, if the old voices return, if the shadows grow loud, if the chains rattle faintly once more, know this: you do not walk alone. The path is well trodden. The fire has been kept. And joy, that ancient light, still waits, just behind the veil, just beneath the pain, just inside your next breath. You have broken the chain. Now walk as though you are free. Now live as though joy is not a distant shore, but the ground beneath your feet.